All right, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
Kevin, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Summit, New Jersey, which is North Jersey, about 20 minutes from Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a small town called Madison, really nice little town up in Jersey. Grew up there, wanted to be a police officer early in life up there. Eventually, we moved to Sarasota, Florida, and was raised there for quite a while until I decided to get into law enforcement.
What was it that made you, as a young man, want to be a cop?
I don't know. I always wanted to be a cop. I remember two detectives from New York coming to my grandfather's house in Madison to look at a car he was selling. And they were dressed in regular clothes. I guess they were off, and they showed up to my grandfather's house to look at a car he was selling. And I just looked at them like they were superheroes, like Batman and Robin were at the house. And, it's just something I always knew I wanted to do.
That's great. And you eventually did it.
Yeah, came to Sarasota, applied for Sarasota's department. They put me on a waiting list. They weren't hiring at the time. I saw that Tampa was hiring, so I moved up here to Tampa, got on right away. Sarasota got in contact with me when I was already going to the academy here in Tampa, and they wanted me to come on there, and I said, sorry, too late, I'm going to stay with Tampa, and that's how I got here.
Tell me about being a cop in Tampa. How do you think it's different than if you'd stayed up by New York?
Well, the crime was bad here back in the day. I started in patrol, didn't do that long, too much paperwork, didn't really like it. I went into the canine unit, had a good dog. I enjoyed that, did that for 5 years. And then I got into plainclothes street-level narcotics. And I fell in love with that because I got to go to work dressed like this. No more uniform. Nobody knew I was a cop. Got to fool the bad guys, make arrests that way.
Did you have the beard?
I did not have a beard at the time. I wore a wig. Back when I did street level, we weren't allowed to have long hair, so I wore a wig that was down to about the middle of my back. I'd go out in a like a gas station shirt, that an employee would wear at a gas station with a name tag, and I probably did more undercover drug purchases than anybody on the department at that time. I was good at it. I had the gift of gab, I guess, from being up from Jersey, that Northeast wit. So I could talk anybody into anything.
Being an undercover narcotics detective is a bit of a jump from the cops that came by your.
Oh yeah, well, who knows? Maybe those guys were undercover narcotics that came, but. I just, once I got on, and I got to wear plain clothes and go to work undercover, I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my career.
The adrenaline has got to be a big part of it, right?
It is. It's, like I said, I probably bought more dope. We had a unit called Quad, Quick Uniform Attack on Drugs. Tampa used to be inundated with crack cocaine when crack cocaine became the thing, and there were probably 100 intersections you could go to here in Tampa, and you'd have your choice of dealers. There'd be anywhere from 2 to 15 guys selling crack. So it was the wild, wild west back in the day when I was doing it. The street corners, yeah.
It's still going on today, just in different.
It's probably still going on. When I drive through town, I don't live in the city anymore. I live on the outskirts, but when I go to certain places I used to work in, it looks a whole lot better. It's a lot cleaner. I'm sure there's still a lot of places you can go to get street level narcotics here, but it's a whole lot better than when I was in Quad and we fought against that stuff.
You have some interesting stories?
A couple. One time I went to a hotel on Nebraska. I was, one of my informants that was a prostitute set me up to go there and buy off a black male who was in the hotel. So I knock on the door. He was expecting me through my informant. I bought the cocaine from him, and then the unexpected happened. Now, sometimes doing undercover, I'd wear a gun, hide a gun. Sometimes I didn't. It depended on what I was doing, where I was going, how I felt, what I was wearing. Sometimes I did the undercover without having a gun with me. This time, thank goodness, I had one. So I bought the cocaine from the guy, and he decides to block the door. I thank him. I go to the door. He blocks the door. He goes, "You're not going anywhere till I see you do it." Well, obviously, we're not allowed to do it. Don't want to do it. So when he blocked the door, and he had a prostitute in the bed in his room, she was under some covers. She was fiddling around, so I didn't trust her. I didn't know if she had a gun underneath the covers. So luckily this time I had my gun. I reached behind me, pulled my gun out, pointed it to his head, and I said, you make a move, I'll blow your head off. How's that sound? I'm a cop. And then the prostitute started fiddling around under the covers, and I thought she might be going for something, so I put the gun on her and told her the same thing. I said, "Darling, you better freeze." I said, "While I back out of this room, you do anything that other than that, you're going to get it." So I held the gun on the both of them, made my way out of the room and called in the cavalry, who, I had backups hiding outside the hotel room, and we made the arrest without incident, thank goodness.
Yeah. And you're married?
I'm married. My wife was a cop. You met her downstairs. She was a cop for a while. I didn't really want to be married serious with a female cop. I didn't want to have to worry about her. She was a nurse prior, and after we got married and became, a solid relationship, she quit the department pretty much because that's what I want her to do, and she went back into nursing. Yeah.
And she understands the crazy lifestyle you really.
Yeah, she did, but I didn't bring it home. A lot of cops live, eat, and breathe this stuff. To me, it was just a paycheck. It really was. I mean, just make sure my check's there every 2 weeks. I didn't think of my job, even though it was a lot different. I didn't think of it any different than a guy who collects garbage, the mailman. I really didn't. But so I didn't take a lot of home and tell her stories like I've heard a lot of guys say they do. I was able to separate the two and
I would think it'd be hard once you started living this lifestyle, even though you're on the right side of the law, to just keep it separate from your personal life.
Yeah, but I did. I mean, I was a baseball coach as well. My son was into sports. I did a lot of coaching, and to be honest with you, I like that, and that was more important to me than the job. So I was easily able to forget the job when I was off and get into that part of my life because I loved coaching.
Yeah, the adrenaline rush, though.
Yeah. Well, another good story, a bit of a sad story. I did undercover for one of the biggest street level operations probably ever. I know in Quad's history, Quad's no longer a unit. They call it something else now, but I had a black female informant. I forget I think we were paying her. She wasn't working off charges. We were paying her to take me around and do this stuff. Well, she took me to 40 of probably the top level. Now, these weren't huge guys selling kilos. These were street level guys. But they were the bigger street level dealers who'd give it out to other guys who'd go infest the street corners. She took me around to 40 of them over a couple month period, me undercover with her in the car. And I bought dope from about 40 different, again, of the bigger street level dealers. And we didn't arrest them right away. We just identified them, made sure we knew who they were, and we saved it for a big roundup when we had bought from everybody we could. So we do the roundup. We get about 30 of the 40 that day. Good roundup, real good deal for us, the city. I think we got the other 10 later. We got most of them. I think we got them all. It took us a while to get the other 10. Well, unfortunately, the informant, after this was over, I knew a lot of them would put two and two together. I mean, they take a risk too, either working off charges or getting paid to do this. They're taking a risk. She received a box one day. I don't remember if it came through the mail or if somebody made it look that way and put it on her porch. The informant that took me around to do all these cases. She takes the box in her kitchen and it blows up. Somebody had sent her a package bomb. So she wasn't killed. She was severely hurt, and a lot of her kitchen was blown up. I never did go to see her. I felt kind of bad about that. You're not supposed to get personal with your informants. You know, you don't really have anything to do with them unless you're on the job actually working a case. But I really did want to go see her. I like this girl. She did a lot for me, for the city. But I never did go to see her. My supervisors did, and we ended up giving her money. She recovered. She got out of the hospital, and the city gave her money to relocate, to move out of town.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You see a big difference between the makeup of somebody who takes, a career on the right side of the law and those that are on the wrong side?
Oh yeah,
The cops and the criminals. Is there a big difference?
Well, there should be.
There should be.
There's not. There's certain departments where they cross the line. They do things. I've heard stories, valid stories, where they cross the line, and in my opinion, they become criminals themselves. When I got promoted to vice detective and we did the bigger cases, the kilos, things like that, I ran into thousands of dollars on a monthly basis. We seized thousands of dollars. I never took a penny. It was drug money, and I was there counting it, seizing it from these guys who made the money off selling drugs. Thousands of dollars on a monthly basis. I never even thought about taking a penny. To me, that was stealing. I would have been almost just as much a criminal as them. Most of my informants were prostitutes. I'd go out and make sex cases on them. Instead of charging them, I'd offer them to take me around to they were all on dope. So instead of charging them with the sex charge, they would work off their charges by taking me to drug dealers around the city and make cases on them. But, I heard guys say they tasted the drugs. Why would you want to taste it? Some of the drugs were laced they put poison in drugs. They put all sorts of cut stuff to make more money and rip people off as opposed to selling pure stuff. Why as a cop would you want to taste it? We weren't allowed to taste it. If I tasted drugs doing a case and they found out, I would have been fired. Other departments, I won't name names, I guess got away with that. But to me, that's the wrong way to go. Tampa ran a real tight ship, and I think most departments around the country do. Now, other departments get away with a little more, have been known to be, corrupt, some corruption. I'm not going to mention any agencies. You can imagine who I'm talking about. We ran a tight ship at Tampa. If you screwed up, you got in trouble. If you screwed up bad, you'd get fired. If you really screwed up, you'd be prosecuted and arrested. So it was a tight ship working for Tampa, and I'm glad I worked for an agency like that.
And you worked how many years?
23 years, probably 3/4 of that in undercover, whether it was street level or vice detective.
Do you see society getting worse or better with crime?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, society, I think, is going down the toilet, but not just with drugs. As I said, when I come into Tampa now, I see places that used to be drug infested. They're now nice looking places. So I know, speaking of the city of Tampa, it's been cleaned up quite a bit, and I'm proud to say that I was a good part of that. When I got to Vice, it was harder to do undercover as a white male because they didn't trust us. If I did my share of undercover, but it was an advantage as a vice detective to be black, Hispanic, because sellers, dealers would trust somebody like that more than myself. So I had to pretty much count on informants. There's an old saying: a vice detective is only as good as their informants, and that's basically true. And we'd get them through either arresting a small fish, we'd climb the ladder to bigger fish with them, reducing their charges, or some people just worked for us for money. They wanted to do it, and we'd pay them for helping us out.
Mental illness is a big thing out there and on the streets. What kind of stuff have you seen in your career?
Well,
there's some crazy people out there.
There's some crazy people. I had an informant, a black female. She was a prostitute. I had made a case on her. And again, she'd turn in all her drug dealers to not be charged for her sex charge. And she used to tell me that she had a client who was a doctor here in Tampa, a doctor. And he would pick her up and take her to his home, beautiful home. She said definitely looked like a doctor's home. And I was sure this guy was really a doctor. And he would pay her to throw rotten fruit at him naked. He would tie his hands behind his back, get naked, lean over a chair, and he had a bowl of rotting fruit on a table. And he would pay her to throw rotten fruit at his rear end, splattering it all over the place. That would turn him on, and then he'd masturbate.
It's not hurting anybody.
Not hurting anybody. But this is a doctor. You gotta. That's kind of strange. She had another client who was a lawyer, was an attorney here in Tampa, and he'd either pick her up and take her to his home, which was another beautiful home, she said, lawyer's home, or he'd take her to a hotel. What he did was he took her out and made her eat. He'd fill her up. He'd make her eat, keep buying her food till she couldn't take anymore. Well, they'd go back to his house or the hotel. She'd have to poop. So when she had to go, he'd have her sit on a clear table. He'd lie underneath watching it while he masturbated. That turned him on. That's what he paid her to do.
Yeah, lifestyles of the rich and famous.
So, there are some crazy people out there, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I had prostitutes. I won't name any names. I had prostitute informants that I went to a hotel on Dale Mabry here in Tampa one day to set up a deal. And my informant, little white female, she was a pretty girl. She's on the phone and she tells me to hold on. She carries on a conversation and she hangs up. I go, come on, we got to get going here. What? She goes, I'm sorry, that was so-and-so. Won't name any names. He was a professional baseball player. She goes, he's one of my steadies. She goes, that was him. She goes, he's one of my steady clients. Yeah, to each his own. But we also, when I was in Vice, we used to do wiretaps. We'd tap people's phones, the drug dealers' phones, through the, the judge signing it and blah, blah, blah. And we'd listen to all the phone calls to make cases. It was called a wiretap. And I had, we did these dealers here in Tampa, and they would talk about being good friends with a lot of sports figures. They'd mention them in the, on the phone and in conversation. Hey, I'm going to see so-and-so. He's flying me up for the series this weekend. And these are hardcore, big-time drug dealers, saying that these sports stars are still hanging around them, bringing them to games, bringing them to stay with them. And they'd mention the names. And it just made me wonder, it was crazy. Here you are, a successful, big-time sports guy, and you're still doing God knows what with these street drug dealers, So,
how has the career that you had changed you?
Again, Mark, I didn't really, I wasn't, I've heard guys you've had on from other departments say, you just fell into this life, you forgot about your family, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't me. And my family came first. What I did on my own time came first. So it really didn't change me. I feel lucky, blessed. I did 23 years and I have a great pension. I get money put in my account every month for doing nothing.
You were able to keep your work, and
I was able to keep my work, which I've heard a lot of guys say they weren't able to do. And I was able to keep family and friends separate.
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm on a nice pension, enjoying life, golfing, going to the gym, living a good life off of, a lot of people say, Kevin, you earned it, what you did. Well, that might be true. But again, it was dangerous, but I really didn't think of it that way. I thought of it as just another job like anybody else has a job.
You feel like it was something that you were meant to do?
I think it was something I was meant to do. There's two things. I was a good, like I said, I was good at, more so when I was doing the street level cases than being in vice, because as I said, the higher you got and you're doing bigger cases, it was harder to do undercover because of being a white male, and dealers didn't trust you. They thought you were a cop. It was, street level wise, I don't think there was anybody better at the time on the department than I was going out. I'd go to dope holes where they would say they will not sell to white guys. If you're white, you cannot go in there and make a case. So I would, all right, I'd go in there, I'd make a case. I'd like to think I could talk. I could talk these guys after they are arrested to turn in their mothers for leniency. That gift of gab, I guess, like I said, maybe it's from being from the Northeast, where I think it's known up there to be a little quicker, a little wittier. Mm-hmm. Even though I didn't live in Jersey for a super long time, I'm a Jersey guy.
Right. Kevin, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all of this?
The most important lesson? Staying straight, not letting the job become my life, taking over my life, staying on the right side as opposed to other detectives that I've heard talk. Again, I was blessed to work for a department like Tampa who was so strict about doing the right thing. Real quick, just to get on, again, Tampa was a straight-laced police department. You had to do the right thing. Don't get me wrong, we had bad apples. There were guys that were fired. There were guys that were arrested. The best undercover guy, vice detective, one of the best probably Tampa's ever had. When I was doing the street level stuff, he was already a vice detective. He did something with money, or he was giving out information on cops to suspects, saying not to buy from these guys. He was doing something with drug dealers against us, and we couldn't believe it. He was like the god of undercover detectives on our department at the time, and he got caught. And he got fired, and he got prosecuted, and he went to prison. So, there's good and bad in all. I mean, most of the guys I worked with, to let people know, most of the guys I worked with out there did the job for the right reasons. They were good people. They wanted to protect the public. They wanted to put bad guys in jail. But you have your bad apples, no doubt, and there were plenty. Not probably as much as some agencies I could think of and name, but we had our share of people that got in trouble, and I'm just glad. Lessons learned. I'm just glad, I guess, I was able to do things the right way throughout my career. I never tasted any drugs, never used any drugs, didn't sleep with any of my informants. I didn't thousands of dollars I came across on a monthly basis. I could have pocketed $1,000 or $2,000. Who would have known? It was drug money. And I've heard guys say that they did that. Well, to me, that was wrong, and it was wrong. And on Tampa, if they would have found out, I at least would have been fired, if not prosecuted. And I'm glad I never put that to the test and stayed on the right side of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your story.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.